Have you ever just looked around and wondered how scientists make sense of, well, everything? Today, we're going to crack open the scientist's toolkit. We're going to dig into the really big questions, Like, what is your desk actually made of? What's the real difference between a rock and a rose? All right, let's jump right in.
I mean, it's a massive question, isn't it? Where do you even start trying to make sense of all everything in the universe? The answer, it turns out, is surprisingly simple. It comes down to a basic scientific process: observing and then classifying. It's really just about looking closely, asking a few questions, and then sorting things into groups. And believe it or not, that right there, that's the first and maybe the most powerful tool we've got.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning, the most basic level. Before we can sort anything, we kind of need to know what it is. So, what is all this stuff all around us actually made of?
Well, the simplest answer is material. A material is basically any substance that's used to make an object. Just think about the pen in your hand, or maybe the cup on your desk. The plastic, the metal, the ink, the glass, yep, those are all material.
And this brings up a really key distinction: the difference between an object and the materials it's made of. So, a chair, that's the object. But it's made from materials, right? Like wood, metal, and plastic. The big takeaway here is that one single object is usually made up of a bunch of different materials.
All right, now let's zoom out just one more level. All those materials, everything from wood to water, they're all just types of something even more fundamental, and that's matter. The scientific definition is so simple, but it's also kind of profound. If it takes up space, has volume, and it has mass, then it's matter. That's really it. You, the air you're breathing right now, this entire planet, it's all matter.
Okay, so we've established that everything is matter, and matter is made of different materials. Now for the fun part, sorting it all out. How in the world do scientists take this just endless variety of stuff and organize it in a way that actually makes sense?
They start by asking some pretty simple questions about a material's properties. What does it look like? Is it lustrous? That's just a fancy word for shiny, like gold. Or is it non-lustrous, like a piece of paper? How does it feel? Is it hard like a rock or soft like a sponge? And then there's a really cool one: transparency. How much light can actually get through it? To really get a handle on transparency, let's just think about a simple game of hide and seek. How good your hiding spot is, well, it depends completely on the material you're hiding behind.
So if you hide behind a brick wall, you're totally hidden, right? No light gets through, so nobody can see you. That wall is what we call opaque. Wood, cardboard, metals, all perfect examples of opaque materials.
But what if you hide behind a frosted glass door? Now, your friends can probably see your shape, like a blurry outline, but they can't make out any details. Some light is getting through, but it's all scattered. That material is called translucent.
And finally, if you try to hide behind a clear glass window, well, let's be honest, you're not going to win that game. The light passes right through it, and you can be seen perfectly. That window is transparent. See? Simple. Opaque, translucent, transparent.
So we figured out how to sort non-living matter based on its properties. But, that just leads to an even bigger question. What about us? What about plants and animals? What's the real, fundamental line that separates something like a rock from, say, a rose?
Well, science gives us another kind of checklist for this one. To be considered alive, an organism usually has to check off a few key boxes. It needs food for energy, it has to grow and develop, it respires, which for us is just breathing, it gets rid of waste, it responds to what's going on around it, like when you pull your hand away from a hot stove. It reproduces, and shows some kind of movement, even if it's super slow, like a plant turning towards the sun.
But, being alive isn't just about ticking off a list of traits. It's a dynamic process. It's a journey, right? With a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's a cycle. Let's look at a couple of really amazing examples of this.
First up, the mosquito. It all starts as a tiny egg laid in some still water. That egg hatches into a larva, this little worm-like thing wriggling around. Then, that larva transforms into a pupa, still hanging out in the water, and finally, the adult mosquito breaks out, pops through the surface, and flies away. I mean, 4 totally different stages, one incredible transformation.
And if you think that's cool, the frog's life cycle is even more dramatic. It starts as this jelly-like bunch of eggs. Out of those eggs hatches a tadpole, which is pretty much a swimming head with a long tail breathing through gills. But then, this kind of slow-motion miracle starts to happen. Over a few weeks, it sprouts back legs and then front legs, it develops lungs, turns into a little froglet, and finally absorbs its own tail to become an adult frog, ready to live in two different worlds, water and land. It's amazing.
So, we've gone all the way from the basics of matter to the incredible complexity of life. But of course, none of this happens in a vacuum. So let's zoom out one last time to the biggest scale there is, our planet, and the precious, limited treasures that make everything we've just talked about possible.
Let's start with something we almost never think about, the air we're breathing right this second. It's not just air, right? It's a very specific mix. The huge majority of it, about 78%, is nitrogen. The oxygen that we absolutely need to survive, that's only about 21%. And it's this incredibly delicate, specific balance of gases that makes all life on Earth even possible.
Now, when we look at all of Earth's resources, they basically fall into two critical categories. You've got your renewable resources, things like sunlight or forests, which nature can replenish in a reasonable amount of time. But then you have non-renewable resources, like fossil fuels. These exist in a limited supply. Once they're gone for millions of years.
So here's a pretty simple breakdown. Things like air, water, and forests are renewable, although we still have to manage them carefully, of course. But on the other side of the coin, you've got fossil fuels, minerals, and even the soil itself. Those are non-renewable. They took literally ages, geologic time to form, which means the supply we have is all we've got.
And this brings us to a really crucial point, which is captured perfectly in this quote by Mahatma Gandhi. The science tells us the what. It helps us classify our world. But this quote, it makes us ask about the how. How do we choose to use these treasures?
And really, that's the ultimate purpose of this whole toolkit. We've learned how to identify things, how to sort them, how to understand the world, from a tiny little atom all the way up to an entire ecosystem. Science gives us the knowledge, but what we decide to do with that knowledge, well, that's up to every single one of us.